The lawyer's letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between the electric bill and a SUED catalog. I was having coffee on my porch, watching the sun come up over 300 acres of Iowa farmland that my grandfather had bought in 1952. The land that Derek, my nephew, was now trying to take from me. "Uncle Bill," the letter began, formal and cold. "This is to inform you that as the sole heir of Thomas Henderson's estate, I am exercising my legal right to claim the Henderson family farm as outlined in the 1983 partnership agreement between you and my father." I read it 3 times, my coffee going cold in my hands. 40 years. I'd kept Thomas's secret for 40 years, protected him, lied for him, carried the weight of his past so he could have a future. And now his son was trying to steal my land using a legal document that never should have existed in the first place. Let me tell you something about family secrets. They're like buried mines. You walk carefully around them for decades, memorize exactly where they are, build your whole life avoiding them. But eventually, someone who doesn't know they're there comes along and steps right on one. And when it explodes, everyone gets hurt. My brother Thomas died 2 years ago. Heart attack, quick and clean, the way he'd always hoped to go. At his funeral, Derek stood up and gave a beautiful eulogy about his father, the successful businessman, the loving parent, the man who'd built a life from nothing and taught his son the value of hard work and integrity. I sat in the back row and said nothing, because the truth was, Thomas Henderson wasn't even my brother's real name. It started in 1983. I was 28 years old, working the farm with my father, engaged to a girl named Martha Brennan. Life was simple, predictable, good. Then one night in October, someone knocked on my door at 2 in the morning. I opened it to find my brother Tommy standing there with a duffel bag and a face full of terror. "I need your help," he said, "and I can never explain why." Tommy was my older brother by 3 years. We'd grown up on this farm together, played in these fields, swam in the creek that ran through the back 40. But Tommy had left for Chicago after high school, said he wanted more than corn and cows. He'd been working construction, living in the city, and I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. Now he stood on my porch looking like death warmed over, and behind him, idling in my driveway, was a black sedan with government plates. "Tommy, what the hell? Don't use that name." He grabbed my arm. "Never use that name again. I'm Thomas now, Thomas Henderson, and you have to pretend you've known me as Thomas your whole life." 2 men got out of the sedan. Federal agents, though they never showed badges. The older one, gray-haired and tired-looking, did all the talking. "Mr. Henderson," he said, and it took me a moment to realize he was talking to me, not Tommy. "Your brother has agreed to testify in a federal case. In exchange, he's being placed in protective custody under a new identity. We're moving him here, to your farm, because his previous identity is no longer safe." "What kind of case?" "The kind where people who testify end up dead," the younger agent said flatly. "Your brother witnessed something he shouldn't have. Now he's doing the right thing by helping us put some very dangerous people in prison. But those people have long memories and longer reach." I looked at Tommy, at Thomas, at whoever my brother was supposed to be now. "What did you see?" "It doesn't matter," Tommy said quietly. "What matters is that if you don't help me, I'm dead within a week. They've already killed 2 other witnesses. The feds can't protect me in a city, Bill. Too many eyes, too many ways to get to me. But here, on the farm, in the middle of nowhere, I might have a chance. "We need you to corroborate his new identity," the gray-haired agent continued. "If anyone asks, Thomas has always been Thomas. He's your brother. He grew up here. He left for a few years to work construction in Des Moines. And now he's come back to help with the farm. Can you do that?" I should have said no. I should have told them to take their witness protection program and their dangerous criminals and their lies somewhere else. But Tommy was my brother, the only family I had left since our parents died, and he was looking at me with eyes that said, "Please, please, don't let me die." "How long?" I asked. "Until the trial concludes and sentencing is complete. 6 months, maybe a year." It took 40 years. The trial got delayed, then delayed again. Then the case got bigger, more defendants, more charges. The federal prosecutor kept Tommy on standby, kept him buried on my farm in Iowa, kept him living under a false name year after year while they built their case against the Chicago crime family he'd witnessed executing a police informant. By the time the trial finally happened, Tommy had been Thomas Henderson for 8 years. He'd married a local girl named Patricia. They'd had a son, Derek. He'd built a life on a foundation of lies, and I was the only person who knew the truth. "You can't tell Patricia," Tommy told me one night when Derek was 2 years old. "The agent said the fewer people who know, the safer I am. She thinks I'm Thomas Henderson from Iowa. She thinks she knows my whole history. If I tell her the truth now, she'll never trust me again." "You're building your marriage on a lie," I said. "I'm building my marriage on survival," he corrected, "and you're the only person in the world who can destroy it." So I kept the secret. Through Derek's childhood, through Patricia's cancer diagnosis and death when Derek was 15, through all the years Thomas built his construction business and became a pillar of the community. I kept the secret when the FBI finally finished their case and told Thomas he was free to reclaim his old identity if he wanted. He didn't want to. Tommy from Chicago had been dead for 23 years by then. Thomas Henderson was real, had a son, had a business, had a life. Why go back? Besides, Thomas said, the people I testified against are in prison, but their families aren't, their associates aren't. If word got out that I was the witness who put them away, Derek could be in danger. Better to stay Thomas Henderson forever. So that's what he did. He took his lie to the grave 2 years ago, and I thought the secret died with him. I was wrong. Derek showed up at my door 3 weeks after I got the lawyer's letter. He was 34 years old now, looked just like his father, same sharp jawline and intense eyes. But where Thomas had been cautious and grateful, Derek was entitled and aggressive. "Uncle Bill," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "I'm sure you got the letter from my attorney." I did, and the answer is no. That's not how this works. Dad and you signed a partnership agreement in 1983. The farm was supposed to be jointly owned. When Dad died, his half passed to me. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm informing you of the legal reality. I stayed calm, though everything in me wanted to throw him off my porch. That agreement was never filed with the county. It's not legally binding. Dad kept a notarized copy. My lawyer says it'll hold up in court. Derek pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Inside was the document I'd signed 40 years ago, when the federal agents needed to establish Thomas Henderson's claim to the farm as part of his cover story. "This isn't real," I said. "This was just paperwork for—" I caught myself before saying too much. "For what?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "Uncle Bill, is there something about this farm you're not telling me?" There's a lot about this farm I haven't told you. Then maybe it's time you did, because I've been going through Dad's papers, and things don't add up. There are gaps in his history, places where the timeline doesn't make sense. Old friends he claimed to have that I can't find any record of. It's like part of his life just doesn't exist. My blood ran cold. Derek, let this go. The farm is mine. Your father wouldn't want you doing this. My father left me almost nothing, Uncle Bill. His business was mortgaged to the hilt. The house is being foreclosed on. I have student loans, credit card debt, and a wife who's 8 months pregnant. This farm is worth $3 million. I need this. You can't have it. Then I'll see you in court. Derek turned to leave, then paused. And Uncle Bill? I hired a private investigator. If there are secrets about my father, about this farm, about whatever deal you two made in 1983, I'm going to find them, and I'm going to use them. After he left, I sat on my porch for hours, watching the sun set over fields that might not be mine much longer. The secret I'd kept for 40 years was about to explode, and Derek, who had no idea what his father really was, who had no idea the danger he was walking into, was about to trigger something that could get him killed. Because here's what Derek didn't know. The crime family Thomas testified against was called the Molina Organization. In 1983, they were just a Chicago operation running protection rackets and illegal gambling. Today, they're a multi-state criminal enterprise with ties to cartels, political corruption, and enough money to find anyone, anywhere. And the witness who destroyed their patriarch's life? Who sent Francesco Molina to prison for murder, where he died after serving 38 years. That witness was living under the name Thomas Henderson, safe and hidden on an Iowa farm for 4 decades. If Derek's investigation led him to the truth, if he filed court documents using Thomas's old identity, if he put the name Tommy Henderson from Chicago in any public record, the Molinas would know. They'd know their enemy's son was still alive. They'd know where to find him. And Derek, who'd grown up thinking his father was a simple construction worker from Iowa, had no idea how to protect himself from people like that. I had 3 choices. I could let Derek take me to court, let him win the farm, and say nothing. Watch him discover his father's secret through legal documents and put a target on his own back. I could fight him in court and refuse to explain why, let him hate me, let him think I was just a greedy old man stealing his inheritance. Or I could tell him the truth, tell him his father was a federal witness, tell him the Molina family, tell him that by pursuing this case, he was painting a bullseye on himself and his pregnant wife. But telling him the truth meant breaking a promise I'd kept for 40 years. It meant admitting I'd lied to Patricia, that I'd watched Derek grow up believing a fiction about his father's past. It meant destroying everything Thomas had built, the whole careful house of cards that had kept him alive all these years. What would you do? If you'd kept a secret for 40 years to protect your brother, would you break it to protect his son? Even if breaking it might destroy the son's entire understanding of who his father was? Let me know in the comments, because I had to make that choice. And what happened next changed everything. I called Derek 3 days later, told him to come to the farm, alone, no lawyers. He showed up suspicious and defensive, probably expecting another fight about the property. Instead, I handed him a box of documents I'd kept, locked in my safe for 40 years. FBI witness protection papers, court transcripts with Tommy Henderson's testimony, newspaper clippings about the Molina trial, photos of my brother before he became Thomas, when he was still Tommy, wearing different clothes, different haircut, different life. Your father wasn't who you think he was, I said. And before you go any further with this lawsuit, you need to know what you're really dealing with. Derek looked at the papers, confusion turning to shock, turning to something harder. What is this? Sit down. This is going to take a while. I told him everything. The night Tommy showed up at my door, the federal agents and their promises of protection, the execution Tommy witnessed in a Chicago warehouse when he was working a construction job for the wrong people, the testimony that put Francesco Molina away for life, the 40 years of hiding, of being Thomas Henderson, of building a life on a lie. So the partnership agreement, Derek said slowly, was fake, part of the cover story. Yes, and my father, my whole childhood, everything I knew about him, was real in every way except the facts. Thomas Henderson loved you, Derek. He was a good father. He just wasn't the man he said he was before you were born. Derek stood up, paced my living room, picked up the photos of Tommy, and stared at them like he was looking at a stranger. Why didn't he tell me? When I got older, when I could understand, why keep lying? Because the Molinas have long memories, because witness protection doesn't have an expiration date, because telling you would put you at risk. I paused. The kind of risk you're putting yourself at right now. Derek's head snapped up. What? You hired a private investigator. You're filing court documents. You're asking questions about Thomas Henderson's past. If your investigation leads back to Chicago, if the wrong name gets mentioned in the wrong place, the Molina family will hear about it, and they'll come looking. The guy my father testified against has been dead for years. His son isn't. His nephews aren't. His organization isn't. The Molinas are bigger now than they were in 1983. They have resources, connections, and a very long list of scores to settle. I looked at Derek hard. Your father spent 40 years hiding to keep you safe. Now you're about to undo all of that for a farm you don't need. I do need it, Uncle Bill. I'm broke. I have a baby coming. You need to be alive, more than you need $3 million. We sat in silence. Outside, the sun was setting over the fields again, painting everything gold and red. Beautiful. Peaceful. The kind of peace Thomas had found here. The kind Derek was about to destroy. What do I do? Derek asked finally, his voice small. The private investigator has already been asking questions. The lawsuit is already filed. How do I stop this without looking suspicious? You drop the case. You tell your lawyer you've reconsidered, that you want to honor your father's wishes, whatever excuse works, and then you let this go. And the farm? The farm stays mine. But Derek, when I die, it's yours. All of it. I have no other family. I was always going to leave it to you. You just need to wait until I'm gone, and you need to stop digging into your father's past. Derek looked at the papers spread across my coffee table. 40 years of secrets and lies. How do I live with this? How do I look at my father's grave and not feel like everything was fake? Because it wasn't fake. The love was real. The life you had with him was real. The name was a lie, but the man wasn't. Thomas Henderson was who your father became. Tommy from Chicago was who he had to stop being to survive. I wish he'd told me. He wanted to. Near the end, after your mother died, he almost did several times. But he was protecting you, Derek, always protecting you. Even after he was gone, he wanted you safe. Derek gathered up the papers, held them like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I need time to process this. I need to figure out what to do with all of it. Do nothing. That's the safest thing. Put those papers in a safe place and forget about them. Live your life, raise your child, and let your father's secret die with him like it was supposed to. But I could see in Derek's eyes that he wasn't going to do that. He was going to research, investigate, try to understand. He was going to make the same mistake people always make when they learn a dangerous truth. He was going to look too closely at something that should stay buried. And I knew, with a sinking certainty that kept me awake that night, that telling Derek the truth hadn't solved the problem. It had made everything so much worse. Derek called me 4 days after I showed him the witness protection papers. It was 7 in the morning, and I could hear panic in his voice. "Uncle Bill, I need you to come to my house, now. Don't call first, just come." I drove the 40 minutes to Cedar Rapids faster than my old truck had moved in years. Derek's house was a modest split level in a neighborhood that had seen better days. There was a foreclosure notice on the door, and Derek's wife, Sarah's car, was gone from the driveway. Derek met me at the door, unshaven, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Someone's been following me." "What?" "Black SUV, tinted windows. I noticed it 3 days ago, parked across from my office. Then yesterday, same vehicle outside the grocery store. This morning, it was at the end of my street." He pulled me inside, closed the curtains. "Uncle Bill, I dropped the lawsuit like you said. I told my lawyer I was reconsidering. I haven't done anything with those papers you gave me. So why is someone watching me?" My stomach dropped. "The private investigator. What exactly did you have him looking into before I told you the truth?" "Just Dad's background. I asked him to verify the partnership agreement, look into Dad's history in Iowa, see if there were any inconsistencies." Derek paused. He said he'd need to check Chicago records, since that's where Dad supposedly worked construction before coming back to Iowa. "Derek, when did you hire this investigator?" 6 weeks ago. "Why?" 6 weeks. The lawyer's letter had arrived 3 weeks ago, which meant Derek's investigator had been asking questions in Chicago for 3 weeks before I'd even known about the lawsuit. 3 weeks for word to filter through the wrong channels. 3 weeks for someone to notice that people were asking about Tommy Henderson and the Molina case. "What's the investigator's name?" "Gary Mitchell. He's local, has an office downtown. Uncle Bill, you're scaring me. What's happening?" I pulled out my phone, called a number I hadn't dialed in 30 years. It rang 4 times before a voice I barely recognized answered. "This is Agent Reeves." "Michael, it's Bill Henderson. We need to talk, now." Michael Reeves had been the younger agent who'd brought Tommy to my farm in 1983. He'd be in his 70s now, probably retired, but FBI agents never really leave the job behind. "Bill Henderson, I'll be damned. I thought I'd never hear from you again." A pause. "This is about Thomas, isn't it?" His son hired a private investigator, started asking questions about Thomas's past 6 weeks ago. Now Derek's being followed. The line went silent for a long moment. "Where are you right now?" "Derek's house in Cedar Rapids." "Get him out of there. Take him somewhere public, somewhere with cameras and witnesses. And Bill, don't go back to your farm until I call you. If they're watching Derek, they're watching you too." We ended up at a busy diner on the edge of town, sitting in a back booth where we could see both doors. Derek ordered coffee he didn't drink, and I explained what Reeves had said. "So those papers you showed me, the witness protection documents, Someone knows I have them? No. But someone knows questions are being asked about your father. And in the world your father was hiding from, asking questions is the same as drawing a target on your back. Sarah, Derek's wife, called while we were sitting there. Derek stepped outside to take it, came back looking worse. She's at her sister's place. I told her to stay there, told her I'd explain later. He slumped into the booth. Uncle Bill, I have a baby coming in 6 weeks. I can't have my wife in danger because of questions about a father I thought I knew. I know. Do you? Because I feel like you've been sitting on this information for 40 years while I grew up in a lie. You could have told me when I turned 18, when Dad died, any time before I stupidly hired an investigator to dig into his past. He was right to be angry. Your father made me promise. He said the less you knew, the safer you'd be. Well, that worked out great, didn't it? Derek's voice rose, drawing looks from other diners. I'm being followed by criminals because I don't know enough to protect myself. If you'd told me years ago, I never would have hired that investigator. This is on you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Reeves. I made some calls, he said without preamble. The Molina organization has been quiet for years, but there's been movement in the past month. One of Francesco's grandsons, Marco Molina, started asking around about old cases. Specifically, he wanted to know about witnesses from the 1983 trial. Why now? It's been 40 years. Because Marco just found out his grandfather didn't die of natural causes in prison. He was murdered by another inmate 3 years ago, a hit ordered by a rival organization. Marco's been building a list of everyone who put his grandfather away, looking for someone to blame, someone to make an example of. Tommy's been dead for 2 years. But his son isn't. And a private investigator from Iowa asking questions about Tommy Henderson in Chicago. That got noticed. Marco's people started looking into it, and they found Derek. They know Tommy had a son. They know that son lives in Iowa, and they're watching him to see if he leads them to anything useful. Useful like what? Like where Tommy hid for 40 years, like who helped him hide, like you, Bill. I looked across the diner at Derek, who was staring at his untouched coffee, his whole world crumbling around him. What do we do? There's a protective detail I can arrange, but it won't be cheap and it won't be permanent. Or, Reeves hesitated. There's another option, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. We use Derek as bait. My hand tightened on the phone. Absolutely not. Listen to me. Marco Molina wants revenge for his grandfather. He thinks Tommy Henderson destroyed his family. If we can get Marco to make a move on Derek, we can arrest him and dismantle what's left of the Molina operation. It's a chance to finish what Tommy started 40 years ago. By putting my nephew in danger? By using his pregnant wife as leverage? No. Then Derek spends the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. His kid grows up with bodyguards. The Molinas never stop hunting them. Is that better? I hung up on him. Derek had been watching me. What did he say? I told him everything except the bait suggestion. Derek listened, his face growing paler with each detail. So my choices are, live in fear forever or trust the FBI to protect me while they use me to catch criminals. There's a third option. We disappear. Both of us. Take Sarah, leave Iowa, start over somewhere else with new names, new lives. Like Dad did. Derek laughed bitterly. Run and hide and lie to everyone I love for the rest of my life. That worked out so well for him. It kept him alive for 40 years. It made him a ghost. I read those witness protection papers. Uncle Bill. I saw the psychological evaluations. Dad was depressed, anxious, paranoid. He spent 40 years looking over his shoulder, never fully trusting anyone, always waiting for the past to catch up. Is that what you want for me? For my kid? I want you alive. I want to live, not just survive. Derek stood up. I'm going to that private investigator's office. I'm going to find out exactly what questions he asked and where he asked them. Maybe if we know what the Molinas know, we can figure out how to fix this. Derek, I'm doing it with or without you, Uncle Bill, but I'd rather have you with me. Gary Mitchell's office was above a pawn shop downtown, accessed by a narrow staircase that smelled like cigarettes and defeat. The private investigator himself was in his 50s, overweight, wearing a stained shirt and a suspicious expression. Mr. Henderson, didn't expect to see you again so soon. He looked at me. Who's this? My uncle, the one who owns the farm we were investigating. Ah, well, I sent you my final report 2 weeks ago. Case is closed unless you want to pay for more hours. I want to know exactly what you found, Derek said, and who you talked to in Chicago. Mitchell shrugged, pulled up a file on his computer. Not much to tell. Thomas Henderson worked construction in Chicago from 1979 to 1983, just like he said. I verified employment records at 3 different companies. But here's the weird thing, his Social Security number only shows up starting in late 1983. Before that, nothing. No tax records, no credit history, no nothing. It's like he didn't exist before October 1983. Because he didn't. Tommy Henderson became Thomas Henderson in October 1983, and the FBI had manufactured a backstory that would pass casual inspection but would fall apart under serious scrutiny. Who did you talk to in Chicago? I asked. Couple of the old construction foremen, Union Hall records clerk, guy at the city permit office. Mitchell scrolled through his notes. Oh, and I put out some feelers with a contact I have, guy who knows the construction scene in Chicago. Asked if anyone remembered Thomas Henderson from back in the day. What contact? Just a guy. Does odd jobs, knows people. Why does it matter? Because someone's been following Derek since you started asking questions. Someone who doesn't want people digging into Thomas Henderson's past. Mitchell's expression changed from suspicious to worried. Look, I ask questions for a living. Sometimes I step on toes, but I don't get involved in anything dangerous. If I'd known... What's your contact's name? I demanded. Sal Rizzo, small-time guy, runs a bar on the south side. I've used him for Chicago research before, always reliable. I felt my blood run cold. Rizzo? Any relation to the Rizzo family? I don't know, maybe. There are a lot of Rizzos in Chicago. Mitchell was getting defensive now. He's just a bartender who knows the old neighborhood. Derek and I looked at each other. The Rizzo family had been associates of the Molina organization in the 1980s. Sal Rizzo might be a small-time bartender now, but if he was connected to the old families, he'd know exactly who to tell when someone started asking questions about the Molina case. We need to leave, I said quietly. Hold on, Mitchell said. What's really going on here? Is Thomas Henderson in some kind of trouble? Thomas Henderson is dead, Derek said flatly. But the people he was hiding from aren't, and you just led them right to me. We left Mitchell sitting in his dingy office, probably trying to figure out if he should be scared or if we were crazy. In the stairwell, Derek grabbed my arm. Uncle Bill, there's something I need to tell you. Something I found in Dad's papers that I didn't mention before. What? A letter, addressed to me, to be opened after his death. I read it last week, before I even hired Mitchell. Derek pulled out his phone, showed me a photo of handwritten pages. Dad knew the Molinas were still out there. He knew they might come looking eventually, and he left me instructions. The letter was in Thomas's handwriting, cramped and urgent. Derek, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're smart, you'll burn this letter and forget everything I'm about to tell you. But I know you, son. You're curious. You want answers. So, here they are. In October 1983, I witnessed Francesco Molina execute a police informant named Danny Kessler. I was working construction on a warehouse renovation, stayed late to finish a job, and saw it happen through a window. Francesco saw me see him. I ran. The FBI found me before the Molinas did, but barely. They put me in witness protection, gave me a new name, sent me to Bill's farm in Iowa. It was supposed to be temporary. It became permanent. What I never told anyone, not the FBI, not Bill, not your mother, was that I didn't just witness the execution. I recorded it. I had a video camera with me that night. I was documenting the construction work for our supervisor, filming the progress we'd made. When I saw what was happening in the warehouse below, I kept filming. I got the whole thing on tape, Francesco pulling the trigger, 2 other men helping dispose of the body, everything. I gave the FBI a copy of that tape. It was the main evidence that convicted Francesco. But I kept the original. Insurance, I thought. If the Molinas ever found me, I could threaten to release more footage I told the FBI didn't exist. Footage that shows faces of other Molina family members who were never charged, who are still active in the organization today. That tape is hidden in the farm, in the old storm cellar behind the false wall your grandfather built during Prohibition to hide moonshine. The cellar entrance is under the tool shed, northeast corner. Behind the wall is a metal box. Inside the box is the original tape and copies of documents the FBI doesn't know I kept. If the Molinas come for you, Derek, that tape is your leverage. It's your life insurance. Use it wisely. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved. I'm sorry I built your life on lies. But everything I did, every deception, every hidden truth, was to keep you safe. Love, Dad. I stared at the letter, my mind reeling. Tommy kept evidence from the FBI. He's been sitting on footage that could have taken down more of the Molina organization 40 years ago. Which means if we give it to the authorities now, we can finish what Dad started. Derek's eyes were bright with desperate hope. We can end this. We can make the Molinas back off. Or we can get killed trying to retrieve it. I looked at Derek hard. If the Molinas know someone's asking questions, they might already be watching the farm. And if they suspect evidence is hidden there, they'll tear the place apart looking for it. So what do we do? Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Mr. Henderson. A voice I didn't know, smooth and cold. My name is Marco Molina. I believe you have something that belongs to my family. My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Your brother was a liar and a traitor. He destroyed my grandfather's life, and I think he left behind evidence. Insurance, he called it, hidden somewhere safe. A pause. I think it's on your farm, Mr. Henderson, and I think you're going to help me find it. Because if you don't, your nephew, Derek, and his pregnant wife are going to have a very unfortunate accident. The line went dead. Derek had heard enough to know what was happening. They know. They know about the tape. How? How could they possibly know? Dad's letter. I didn't just take a photo of it, Derek looked sick. I scanned it, uploaded it to my email so I wouldn't lose it. Uncle Bill, if someone hacked my email, if they've been monitoring my communications, they'd know everything. They'd know about the farm, the cellar, the tape. They'd know Derek was the weak link, the leverage they needed to get what they wanted. And now the Molinas were coming for us. We had maybe 24 hours before they made their move. 24 hours to decide if we were going to run, fight, or try to retrieve the evidence that might save our lives or end them. What would you do if you had one day to decide between running from your past or confronting it? Between protecting a secret that's kept you alive or exposing it to save your family? The clock was ticking, and every choice looked like a trap. We had two choices: wait for the Molinas to come to us, or go to the farm and get the tape before they did. "We have to get it tonight," Derek said as we sat in my truck in the diner parking lot. "If Marco knows it's there, he's probably already on his way. Or he's waiting for us to lead him right to it." I gripped the steering wheel, thinking through scenarios. The minute we go digging in that storm cellar, if they're watching, they'll know exactly where the evidence is hidden. So what? They already know it's somewhere on the farm. At least if we have the tape in hand, we have leverage. Leverage only works if we're alive to use it. Derek's phone rang. Sarah. He answered on speaker. "Derek, where are you? Your text said to stay at my sister's, but you won't tell me why. What's going on?" "Baby, I need you to trust me. Stay there. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll explain everything soon. But right now, I just need you safe." "You're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry. But please, just do what I'm asking." After he hung up, Derek looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much older. "I can't let anything happen to her, Uncle Bill, or to our baby. If getting that tape is the only way to protect them, then that's what we're doing." I called Reeves back. "The Molinas know about evidence Tommy hid on my farm. They're coming for it. What can you do?" "How much time do we have?" "Maybe 24 hours, maybe less." "I can have a team there in 6 hours, but Bill, if the Molinas are already moving, 6 hours might be too late. And I need to be honest with you, my authority is limited here. I'm retired. I can call in favors, but I can't authorize a full protective operation without evidence of an imminent threat. Marco Molina called me directly and threatened Derek's pregnant wife. Is that imminent enough? Did you record the call?" "No." "Then it's your word against his, and the Molinas have lawyers who'll make that disappear." Reeves sighed. "Get the tape if you can. If it shows what Tommy said it does, if there are faces of active Molina associates on that footage, then we have grounds for protective custody and a full investigation. But until then, you're on your own." So that's how Derek and I ended up driving back to my farm at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night, knowing we were walking into a trap but seeing no other option. The farm looked peaceful in the twilight, fields stretching to the horizon. The old farmhouse where I'd lived my whole life, standing solid against the darkening sky. I'd always loved this place. Now it felt like a battleground. "The tool shed is behind the barn," I said quietly. "Storm cellar entrance is under the northeast corner, hidden by old equipment. Your grandfather was paranoid about tornadoes, dug that cellar deep, reinforced the walls with concrete." "How long since you've been down there?" 20 years, maybe. After the farm got central heating and better construction, we didn't need it for shelter anymore. I've been using it for storage, old furniture and tools, mostly. We parked the truck behind the barn, out of sight from the road. The tool shed was exactly where I'd left it, a weathered structure that had stood since the 1950s. Inside was decades of accumulated farming equipment, rusted and dust-covered. "Northeast corner," Derek said, moving old shovels and rakes aside. "Uncle Bill, there's a handle here." The trap door was heavy, wood swollen from years of humidity. We heaved it open to reveal stairs descending into darkness. I grabbed a flashlight from my truck, and we went down. The storm cellar smelled like earth and mildew, cool air rising from below. The concrete walls were lined with old shelves holding mason jars of preserves my grandmother had canned decades ago. In the back corner, exactly where Thomas's letter said it would be, was a wall that looked slightly different from the others. "False wall," I said, running my hand along the seam. "Your great-grandfather built this during Prohibition. Federal agents raided farms looking for illegal stills. This wall saved him from jail." Derek found the hidden latch, a piece of metal disguised as a wall bracket. The false wall swung open on hinges that squeaked from disuse. Behind it was a small cavity, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet, and sitting in that cavity was a metal ammunition box, U.S. Army surplus, sealed with rust and time. Derek pulled it out carefully. The box was heavier than it looked. Inside, wrapped in plastic to protect against moisture, was a VHS tape labeled simply October 14th, 1983, in Thomas's handwriting. Beneath the tape were folders of documents, newspaper clippings, and photographs. "We should watch this," Derek said. "We should see what Dad saw." "Not here. We need to get this somewhere safe first, somewhere with witnesses and cameras. Then we can decide what to do with it." We were halfway up the stairs when I heard it. The sound of car doors closing, multiple vehicles pulling into my driveway. "Too late," I whispered. "They're here." We killed the flashlight and froze on the stairs, listening. Footsteps outside, men's voices speaking quietly. Then, a voice I recognized from the phone call earlier. "Mr. Henderson, I know you're here. Your truck is behind the barn. Why don't you come out so we can have a civilized conversation?" Marco Molina. He'd brought friends. Derek and I looked at each other in the darkness. The storm cellar only had one exit, the trap door we'd come through. We were trapped. "I'm going to count to 10, Marco called out. "If you're not out by then, I'm sending my associates to find you, and they're not as patient as I am." I made a decision. "Stay here," I whispered to Derek. "Stay quiet. If they take me, wait until they're gone, then get that tape to Reeves." "Uncle Bill, no. Your wife needs you alive. Derek, your baby needs you alive. I'm 68 years old. I've lived my life. Let me protect you the way I couldn't protect Tommy." Before Derek could argue, I climbed the stairs, emerged from the tool shed, and walked out into the yard with my hands raised. Marco Molina stood in the glow of my porch light, flanked by 4 men who looked like they'd walked out of a crime movie. Marco himself was younger than I expected, maybe 40, wearing an expensive suit that looked ridiculous in a farmyard. But his eyes were old, hard, the eyes of someone who'd seen violence and ordered more. "Mr. Henderson, thank you for being reasonable." Marco smiled, but it didn't reach those eyes. "Where's your nephew?" "Gone. I dropped him at the bus station hours ago. He wanted nothing to do with this." "Liar. His car is in your driveway. He left it here, didn't want to be followed." Marco studied me, trying to decide if I was telling the truth. It doesn't matter. You're the one who knows where the tape is anyway. Thomas wouldn't have hidden it somewhere his son could find it easily. He'd have told someone he trusted, someone who'd been keeping his secrets for 40 years. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. My grandfather spent 38 years in prison because of your brother's testimony. He died in that prison, murdered by animals, denied the dignity of dying at home with his family. Marco's voice hardened. And now I find out Thomas kept evidence, insurance he called it, evidence that could put more of my family away, evidence that's hidden somewhere on this farm. Your grandfather was a murderer. He executed a police informant in cold blood. Thomas witnessed it and did the right thing by testifying. The right thing? Marco laughed, harsh and bitter. The right thing would have been minding his own business. Nobody asked your brother to be a hero. And look where it got him. 40 years of hiding, living under a false name, never able to be himself. Was that justice, Mr. Henderson? Or was that just a different kind of prison? He had a point, much as I hated to admit it. Tommy had spent 40 years as Thomas, never free, always looking over his shoulder. The witness protection program had saved his life, but taken his identity. "What do you want?" I asked. "The tape, the original footage your brother recorded, any copies he made, any documents or evidence he kept. You give me everything, I disappear, and your family never hears from the Molina organization again." "And if I don't?" Marco pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. Sarah, Derek's wife, getting out of her car at her sister's house. The photo was time-stamped 30 minutes ago. "I have people watching her. One phone call, Mr. Henderson, and your nephew becomes a widower before his child is even born. Your choice." My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice steady. "I don't have the tape. Thomas never told me where he hid it." "Then I guess we're going to have to search thoroughly." Marco nodded to his men. "Tear this place apart. Start with the house, then the outbuildings. If it's here, find it." The men moved toward my farmhouse with the casual efficiency of people who'd done this before. I watched helplessly as they kicked in my front door, heard the sounds of furniture being overturned, glass breaking, my whole life being destroyed in search of evidence I was standing on top of. It took them 45 minutes to work through the house and start on the outbuildings. They found the barn empty, the garage yielding nothing. Then they approached the tool shed. I had to do something. If they found Derek in that storm cellar with the tape, they'd kill him. No witnesses, no loose ends. Marco might pretend to be civilized, but he was his grandfather's blood. Violence was the family business. "Wait," I said as Marco's men reached the tool shed door. "I'll tell you where it is. Just call off your people watching Sarah. Let Derek's wife go, and I'll give you everything." Marco considered this. "Show me the tape first. Prove you have it. Then I'll make the call." He followed me to the tool shed, leaving 2 of his men outside. I opened the door, led him inside to the trap door, knowing Derek was below, armed with nothing but a metal box and 40-year-old evidence. "It's down there," I said, "in the storm cellar, behind a false wall." Marco smiled. "Of course it is. Clever. Your brother always was creative." He gestured for me to lead the way. I climbed down the stairs, Marco following with a flashlight. At the bottom, in the cool darkness of the cellar, I could feel Derek's presence, but couldn't see him. He'd hidden somewhere, waiting. "The back wall," I said, leading Marco to the false wall we'd opened earlier. "Behind there." Marco shone his light into the cavity. Empty. The box was gone. Derek had taken it deeper into the cellar, hiding it, buying time. "Where is it?" Marco's voice went dangerous. "Don't play games with me, old man." "It was here. I swear it was here." Marco grabbed my shirt, slammed me against the concrete wall. "You think I'm stupid? You think I won't hurt you because you're an old farmer?" He pulled out a gun, pressed it against my stomach. "Last chance. Where is it?" "Right here," Derek's voice came from the darkness. "And if you shoot my uncle, you'll never see it." Marco spun, his flashlight finding Derek standing near the stairs, holding the metal box. In his other hand was his phone, camera pointed at us. "I'm recording this," Derek said. "You threatening my uncle at gunpoint, you breaking into his property. All of it. I've been streaming it live to cloud storage. If anything happens to us, to Sarah, to anyone in my family, this video goes to every news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country." It was a bluff. I could see Derek's hand shaking, see the fear in his eyes. But it was a good bluff. Marco lowered his gun, but his smile never wavered. "Smart, like your father, but you're missing something important." "What's that?" "I don't care if the world knows what I did here tonight. My family has been dealing with law enforcement for 70 years. We have lawyers, judges, politicians on our payroll. A video of me threatening an old man? That's Tuesday for us. But you know what would really hurt me? What would damage my reputation in my organization?" He raised the gun again, not pointed at me, but at Derek. "If I let you walk away, if I let you win, that's weakness. And in my world, weakness is death." Marco's finger moved to the trigger. "So, here's how this ends. You give me the tape, I shoot you both and burn this farm to the ground. And I tell my people watching Sarah that there's been a terrible accident. Gas leak, maybe. Old farmhouse, faulty wiring. These things happen." Or, a new voice said from the top of the stairs, "You drop the weapon and put your hands where I can see them." Michael Reeves stood at the cellar entrance, flanked by 4 FBI agents in tactical gear, all with weapons drawn. Behind them, I could hear more agents taking down Marco's men outside. "Marco Molina," Reeves continued, "you're under arrest for threatening a federal witness, illegal possession of a firearm, breaking and entering, and being generally stupid enough to assault people while on FBI surveillance." Marco's face went through several emotions, settling on resigned anger. He dropped his gun, raised his hands. "How long have you been watching?" "Since Derek's phone call 6 hours ago, the one where he finally agreed to let us use him as bait." Reeves smiled. "Turns out, catching you threatening civilians with evidence of your grandfather's crimes is exactly the kind of imminent threat we needed to justify a full operation." I looked at Derek. "You called them?" "While you were driving here? I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Uncle Bill, but Reeves said you'd refuse if you knew. He was right, wasn't he?" He was right. I'd never have agreed to put Derek at risk like that. But Derek had made the choice himself, had decided to be brave like his father, to end the threat instead of running from it. Marco was cuffed and led up the stairs, still smiling that cold smile. "This won't stick. My lawyers will have me out in 48 hours. "Maybe," Reeves said. "But that tape your grandfather's worried about? The one with faces of Molina associates who were never charged? We're going to watch it tonight, and then we're going to start making arrests. The Molina organization, as you know it, is done, son. Your grandfather's legacy is over." After Marco and his men were loaded into federal vehicles, After agents had secured the farm and taken statements, after the chaos finally settled into an exhausted silence, Derek and I sat on my porch watching the sun come up. The metal box sat between us, unopened. Inside was 40 years of secrets, evidence that would destroy what was left of the MAFIA organization, proof that Thomas Henderson had been both a hero and a man living in constant fear. "Do you want to watch it?" Derek asked. "Before we give it to the FBI?" I thought about Thomas, about Tommy, about the frightened man who'd shown up on my doorstep at 2 in the morning 40 years ago. Did I want to see what he'd seen? Did I want to witness the moment that had defined the rest of his life? "No," I said finally. "That was your father's burden. Let the FBI have it. Let them finish what he started. We've carried these secrets long enough." Derek nodded, then stood up. "I need to call Sarah. Tell her it's safe to come home. Tell her—" He paused. "Tell her about her father-in-law, about who he really was. Will you tell her everything? The witness protection, the 40 years of lies? Every word. No more secrets, Uncle Bill. No more hiding. Whatever comes next, we face it with the truth." He went inside to make his call, and I sat alone on my porch, watching the sun paint gold across fields that had been in my family for 3 generations. The farm was damaged, my house torn apart by Marco's search, but it was still standing, still mine. And for the first time in 40 years, I didn't have to carry the weight of Thomas's secret. It was over. The threat was neutralized. The Molinas were going to prison. Derek and Sarah and their baby would be safe. But as I sat there in the dawn light, I couldn't shake the feeling that secrets never really die. They just wait for the right moment to come back and demand their price. What would you do if you'd spent 40 years protecting your family with lies, only to discover the truth was the only thing that could save them? Sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't the secret itself, but what happens when you finally let it go. 6 months later, I stood in a hospital waiting room holding a cup of terrible coffee, watching Derek pace back and forth like a caged animal. Sarah had been in labor for 14 hours, and my nephew looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single night. "She's going to be fine," I told him for the 100th time. "First babies take time. Your father was in labor with you for 18 hours. Derek stopped pacing, looked at me with exhausted eyes. "Did Dad ever tell you he was scared? When I was born, was he afraid of what kind of father he'd be, living under a false name, always looking over his shoulder? He was terrified, but he loved you from the moment you were born. I was there, Derek. I saw his face when the nurse put you in his arms. All that fear disappeared. All that mattered was protecting you. Like you protected him. Like we both tried to protect you." The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Marco Molina was convicted on 14 counts, including threatening federal witnesses, conspiracy, and illegal weapons possession. The tape Thomas had hidden for 40 years showed exactly what he'd promised. Francesco Molina, executing Danny Kessler in that Chicago warehouse, but also faces of 5 other men who'd never been charged, men who were now serving 20 to life sentences thanks to evidence they'd thought was safely buried with Thomas Henderson. The Molina organization collapsed within months. 40 years of criminal enterprise dismantled by a VHS tape recorded by a construction worker who'd been in the wrong place at the right time. The FBI called it the biggest organized crime bust in a decade. I called it Thomas finally being able to rest. Marco's final words at sentencing had stayed with me. My grandfather spent 38 years in prison for one mistake. Your brother spent 40 years in prison too, just a different kind. Nobody won. Nobody ever wins in this game. He was right. Tommy had survived, had built a life as Thomas, had raised a son and run a business and done everything you're supposed to do. But he'd never been free, never been able to be himself. Always looking over his shoulder, always waiting for the past to catch up. The cost of survival was identity. The price of protection was truth. Mr. Henderson? A nurse appeared in the doorway, smiling. You can come back now. Mom and baby are both healthy. Derek practically ran down the hallway. I followed more slowly, my 68-year-old knees reminding me that I wasn't built for hospital marathons. Sarah was propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blue blankets. Derek sat beside her, tears streaming down his face, one hand gently touching the baby's head. Uncle Bill, Sarah said softly, come meet your great nephew. I approached the bed, looked down at the smallest Henderson I'd ever seen. He had Derek's nose, Sarah's mouth, and Thomas's eyes. Those same intense, intelligent eyes that had looked up at me from a construction worker's face 40 years ago, asking me to keep a secret that would define all our lives. Have you picked a name? I asked. Derek and Sarah exchanged a look. Thomas William Henderson, Derek said. After my father and my uncle, the two men who taught me what it means to protect your family. My throat tightened. Thomas would have been honored. Would he? Derek looked at his son, at this tiny human who would never meet his grandfather, who would grow up knowing the truth instead of living a lie. I keep thinking about what Dad went through, keeping that secret for 40 years. Would he be proud of how this ended, or would he think we destroyed everything he built? He'd be proud, I said firmly. Your father wanted you safe. That was all that ever mattered to him. The fake name, the hidden past, the constant fear. All of it was to protect you. And when you had the chance to end that threat permanently, you took it. You were braver than he ever could have been, because you faced the truth instead of running from it. Sarah adjusted little Thomas in her arms. Tell me about him. About who he really was before witness protection. I only knew Thomas Henderson, the businessman. I want to know Tommy from Chicago. So I told them about the brother I'd grown up with, the one who'd climbed trees and played in the creek and dreamed of bigger things than a farm in Iowa, about the kid who'd left for Chicago with nothing but ambition and returned with a death sentence. About the man who'd made an impossible choice and lived with the consequences for 40 years. He loved terrible jokes, I said, the kind that make you groan. And he was terrified of spiders, which was hilarious on a farm. When we were kids, I once put a plastic spider in his bed, and he screamed so loud our father thought the barn was on fire. Derek laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in months. He never told me that. He never told me anything about his real childhood. Because he couldn't. Every story would have been a potential slip, a crack in the cover identity. So he built new memories, new stories, a new version of himself that was safe to share. I looked at the baby, at this new life built on truth instead of deception. But you don't have to do that, Derek. You can tell your son about his grandfather, all of it, the good and the bad, the real name and the fake one. He can grow up knowing the whole story. What do I tell him when he asks why his grandfather had to hide? You tell him that sometimes good people see evil things, and they have to choose between staying safe or doing what's right. And you tell him his grandfather chose right, even though it cost him everything. That's the legacy Thomas Henderson left behind. Not the construction business or the fake identity, but the courage to stand up and testify, knowing it would destroy his life. 3 weeks after little Thomas was born, Derek and I stood in my barn, looking at the repairs we'd been making since the night Marco Molina's men had torn through the farm. The house was mostly fixed now. New front door, replaced windows, fresh paint covering the damage. The tool shed had been reinforced and we'd sealed the storm cellar permanently. No more hidden compartments, no more buried secrets. Uncle Bill, about the lawsuit, Derek started, awkward. I formally withdrew it last month. My lawyer filed all the paperwork. The farm is yours, completely and legally, like it always should have been. I know. Reeves told me. I handed Derek a folder. And this is my response. Inside was a new partnership agreement, legally filed with the county, splitting ownership of the farm 50-50 between Derek Henderson and William Henderson. Real this time, not part of a cover story. Uncle Bill, I can't... Yes, you can. This farm has been in our family for 3 generations. It should stay in our family. You and Sarah are moving into the old foreman's house on the property next month. You're going to help me run this place, and when I'm gone, it's yours and little Thomas's. That's how it should be. Derek stared at the papers, then at me. You kept Dad's secret for 40 years. You protected me when I didn't even know I needed protecting. You almost got killed because I was stupid enough to hire a private investigator. And you're giving me half your farm? I'm giving you what your father would have wanted you to have. A home, a legacy, a life built on truth instead of lies. I put my hand on his shoulder. Thomas spent 40 years making sure you had a future, Derek. Let me spend whatever time I have left making sure that future is everything he hoped for. We worked in silence for a while, fixing fence posts and mending what had been broken. The physical work felt good, honest, the kind of labor that builds something instead of hiding it. Do you regret it? Derek asked eventually. Keeping the secret all those years, lying to everyone, including me? I thought about it, really thought about it. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Thomas never got to be Tommy again. I regret that you grew up not knowing the whole truth about your father. But do I regret protecting my brother? No. Family means making sacrifices, sometimes sacrifices that hurt. Your father sacrificed his identity to keep you safe. I sacrificed the truth for the same reason. You sacrificed your safety by becoming bait for the FBI. That's what love looks like, Derek. It's not always pretty, it's not always comfortable, but it's always worth it. I want to be that kind of father to Thomas, the kind who protects him no matter what. Then be honest with him. Tell him the truth, even when it's hard. That's the one thing your father couldn't do, and it ate at him his whole life. You don't have to make that same sacrifice. You have the freedom to be truthful. Use it. That evening, sitting on my porch with the sun setting over fields that now belonged to both of us, Derek told me something I hadn't known. Dad left me a letter, he said quietly. A different one from the one about the tape. This one was supposed to be opened on my wedding day, but with everything that happened, I forgot about it. I found it last week going through old boxes. What did it say? It said that if I ever had children, I should name them after the people who protected me. He suggested Thomas for a boy and Helen for a girl. Helen was my mom's name. But he said if I wanted to honor the person who'd sacrificed the most for our family, I should use William. My eyes stung. He said that. He said you were the real hero of his story, that you gave up a normal life, gave up ever being able to explain to anyone why you were so protective of your brother's family, gave up the truth, all to keep a promise. He said he never thanked you properly, never acknowledged what those 40 years cost you. They didn't cost me anything that mattered. They cost you relationships. Martha, your fiancée, she left because you wouldn't explain why you were so secretive about Thomas. You never married, never had kids of your own, because you were too busy protecting us. That was true. Martha had broken off our engagement in 1985, frustrated by my refusal to discuss my brother's sudden appearance or explain why I was so paranoid about certain subjects. I'd let her go rather than risk exposing Thomas's secret. Over the years, there had been other women, other relationships that ended because I couldn't be fully honest about my life. I made my choices, I said. I don't regret them. Well, I want little Thomas to know what you gave up for us, so when he's older, when he can understand, I'm going to tell him about his great Uncle William, the man who kept the secret, the real hero of the Henderson family. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. In the distance, I could see the lights in the foreman's house, where Sarah was probably putting little Thomas to bed, starting the nightly rituals that would define his childhood. "What do you think Dad would say if he could see us now?" Derek asked. "I think he'd say he's sorry. Sorry for the lies, sorry for the fear, sorry for all of it. But I also think he'd say it was worth it, because you're alive, Sarah's alive. Little Thomas is alive and healthy and growing up in a world where the Molinas can't hurt him. That was all your father ever wanted. Do you think he's at peace now, wherever he is?" I thought about Thomas, about Tommy, about the brother who'd knocked on my door at 2 in the morning and changed both our lives forever. I think he found peace the day you were born, Derek. Everything after that was just him fighting to protect that peace. Now it's your turn to be at peace. Raise your son, work the farm, live the life your father couldn't. That's his legacy. Not the secrets or the hiding, but the family that survived, despite everything. Derek stood up, stretched, looked out at the farm that was now half his. "I'm going home to my wife and son. You should come over for breakfast tomorrow. Sarah's making her famous pancakes." "I'll be there." After Derek left, I sat alone on my porch, like I had 1,000 times before. But this time, there was no weight on my shoulders, no secret to guard, no lie to maintain. Just an old man, a farm, and the knowledge that he'd done right by his family. My phone buzzed. A text from Reeves. "Thought you'd want to know. Last of the Molina associates was sentenced today. Organization officially dissolved. Tommy's testimony, 40 years later, just closed the final chapter. He'd be proud." I texted back, "We all would." The truth is, secrets are like seeds. You bury them thinking they'll stay hidden, but they always find a way to grow. They push through the soil, reach for the light, and eventually they either bloom into something beautiful or become weeds that strangle everything around them. Thomas's secret grew into 40 years of protection, of sacrifice, of a life lived in the shadows so his son could live in the light. My secret, the one I kept for him, grew into this moment, sitting on a porch, watching the stars come out over land that would pass to Derek, and from Derek to little Thomas, and on through generations who would know the whole story. The real question isn't whether you should keep secrets. The real question is what you're willing to sacrifice to protect the people you love, and how much truth you're willing to face when those secrets finally come to light. I kept my brother's secret for 40 years. It cost me love, honesty, and the simple freedom of being able to tell my own story without lies. But it saved Derek's life. It gave little Thomas a chance to grow up safe. It protected a family that was built on one man's courage to stand up and testify, no matter the cost. Was it worth it? Every single day. Would I do it again? Without hesitation. Because family isn't about DNA or legal documents or even shared history. Family is about showing up when someone needs you, keeping your promises when they're hardest to keep, and protecting the people you love even when they don't know they need protecting. Thomas Henderson was my brother twice. Once by blood, when he was Tommy from Chicago, and once by choice, when he became someone else to survive. I protected both versions of him, and I'd protect Derek and little Thomas the same way if I had to. That's what the Henderson family does. We protect each other. We keep our promises. We sacrifice when we have to. And we face the truth when we can. And we pass that legacy down, from grandfather to son, so that each generation knows what real family looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but always, always worth fighting for. Here ends our story. If you've ever kept a secret to protect someone you love, if you've ever sacrificed your own truth for someone else's safety, you understand. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to this channel for more.